Hi, welcome to another Learn, Grow, Invest meeting. I'm Renee, your host for the evening, and I am so excited about this about this conversation today. In this time of the pandemic and everything else that we're dealing with, a lot of persons are identifying who they are as individuals and building personal brands, building businesses, identifying, the creative side, the entrepreneurial side, the side of you that wants that additional stream of income. And so there are a lot of things at play and a lot of ways that we can build businesses and improve our personal brand. But today we're going to help you out by sharing some like priceless information from our guest who will be sharing on how to build your personal and business brands on social media. So, without further ado, let us get started. So, if it is your first time with us, welcome. Learn, Grow, Invest is a not-for-profit community that focuses on the promotion of financial literacy, financial education, and the betterment of individuals and our nation as we build wealth together. The whole idea is for us to build each other up and to build our community, build our nation as we all learn, grow, and invest together. We are founded on Deuteronomy 8:18, which states, "Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." And with that, we just want to say, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to meet and speak together in this way. And we pray even now, Lord, that the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart will be acceptable in your sight. In Jesus' precious name. Amen. So you can find us, Learn, Grow, Invest, on all social media platforms. And feel free to follow us there. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and help us to build our nation together. So today we have a particularly exciting guest. And if you are in the social media space, if you are someone with a brand or desirous of building a brand, you need to know this name, right? Her name is Miss Krista Forbes. Help me to welcome her to our platform today for us to get into this conversation and get some real nuggets. Like someone said, it's not nuggets, it's the whole chicken. Yeah, she'll give you the whole chicken this evening. All right, welcome, Krista.
Thank you for having me. No pressure.
Absolutely.
What an intro.
Absolutely. No pressure, for real. No pressure, because we already know that you know your stuff. You know what you do. You do it well. So for those who may not know who you are, may not have heard of Krista Forbes before, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll get right into the meat of the matter.
All right, sure. So officially, hi everyone, I'm Krista. I am a launch and marketing strategist. I help service-based brands, mostly service-based brands and experts, to essentially build their online brands, grow their community, create irresistible offers, monetize their brands, and then scale their businesses.
Awesome. So can you tell why we have invited her here today? We're really happy to have you, Krista. We appreciate it. So let's just start by defining what is a brand.
I'm happy that we're having to have a really candid conversation. Just because I'm gonna be super honest about just kind of like the journey of kind of like my thought process, even with just that question. So if you asked me a few years ago what branding was, I would tell you the colors that your business chose as its brand colors. I'd tell you it is the logo, your website, all of that stuff that's pretty visual. Now that I'm kind of like in the thick of things and I've been in this space for quite a few years, I realize that branding is so much more than that. Like branding really is the way that you, if you're a personal brand or your business, shows up in the world. It's the way that people perceive your business before they enter your doors, or as well as after they enter your doors. So it's kind of this holistic experience that I'm realizing people are finding it really difficult to put into words. But for me, it really is a the entire holistic experience that your customers have with you, that vision that people have of you, or that perception rather that people have of you before they interact with you versus as well as after.
Right. I think that that is so that encompasses it very well, and I think it applies to both our personal brand and our business brand. But I'll let you speak about the difference. What is the difference between our personal brand and the brand for a business or
So
business?
I like to joke that it's basically being able to say I in an email. So when you're doing your email marketing, like businesses tend to have to say we, or speaking like a very vague, like you don't know who we are type of tone. Whereas personal brands, you kind of get to cross that line a little bit and say I and speak directly to the other person on the other side and say you, far less formal. But personal brands really just like in the name have a person behind it. Like you have a very specific face and character and person that you can tie it to. Whereas a business brand, it's really more representative of the organization itself and just kind of like what the organization stands for. Again, how it shows up in the just the world, how it shows up to customers. So that really is the main difference. And if there's anything that I need to kind of like dig deeper on, let me know.
Sure. So how do you tie that together though for an entrepreneur? Because I'm the individual, but I'm also the business. How does that work out, and do you need to separate the two?
So I'm happy that you asked that. Do you need to separate the two? So my advice, especially if you're a small business just starting out and you don't quite have the team to help you manage both brands, I would say don't separate them yet. I do believe in separating versus personal brands, because what I've realized is that when that person wants to kind of expand their interests and kind of do other things or partake in other things that may not align with their business brand, they kind of get into a little bit of trouble. So they run into the mistakes that we'll probably talk about later, which is just confusing their customers and not really staying true to their messaging. So in the early stages, when you don't have a ton of money, when you don't have the team to kind of help you manage both, I do actually recommend marrying the two if your who you are as a person does align with your business brand, as well as if your business can benefit from your personal brand. If it can't, then leave them separate. Go straight for the building of the business brand. But when you're starting out, I want to say it helps to have a person behind a brand. It builds trust with your customers. It helps your customers to just kind of really understand, like, what you're about or what your business is about. So it kind of speaks for you before someone even, like, your personal brand speaks for your business before someone even pays you to do any work.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to touch on one thing about the personal brand. And you can jump in here at any time, Crystal. In terms of our personal brand, it's not only relevant when it comes to us providing a service or a product, right? It is also relevant if we're working for someone else.
Oh
If we
yeah.
are if we are putting out resumes in the world, there is still a personal brand side of things. Because now in this time of everything being virtual, everything is online, everyone is, or a lot of persons are on social media. A part of that assessment of whether you are a right fit for the organization comes through the assessment of your social media pages, doesn't it?
It does, which is really interesting. I know that a lot of people, or some people rather, there's a lot of debate around like if that's right or not, or if that's okay, that people should be able to kind of separate the two. But I've come to, I always tell people that, like, before I was a business, I was a brand. I didn't do it intentionally. I don't know what I was told as I can't remember what I was told as a kid that made me just kind of always believe that for some reason I needed to build some sort of brand. I blame my mom. But before I was a business, before I knew what I was selling, before I even sold anything, I was a brand. Like, I spoke in a certain way, I showed up in a certain way, just because I understood that at some point I would want for my reputation to kind of precede me and just kind of make it easier to open certain doors for me. And from a very early age, I want to say even high school, it started there. So through my personal brand, it got me different opportunities, whether it was for work, just showing up consistently online on social. Social has always been just kind of like where I hung out and where I did a lot of my brand building, just because I wasn't always local. Sometimes I was away. I spent a lot of time away. So my connection to home and building my brand at home came through social. And from that came different first work opportunities. So I remember I was able to get a summer job one summer just by DMing the CEO of a company. And he was just like, I will help you out, just based on the fact that like over time he had seen the work that I was doing online. That turned into a work opportunity. In the future, that turned into business opportunities. So building a brand online.
Absolutely. And I think too, you hit on a solid point. Just being true to yourself, being true to your personal brand on your social media pages opens doors, it opens up opportunities. There are some things that you may not even be thinking about as opportunities, but someone else sees it and sees you and thinks, oh, this person could be the face of what we're trying to do here. One example for us, we were just sharing our story like we always do on our other channel, and someone saw it and they called us the very night that it was released and said, hey, would you like to be the ambassadors for what we're doing here? And just like that, we became foster care ambassadors, just like that. So it wasn't something that we were particularly seeking out. We weren't even aware that this was a thing. But the fact is that by being true to who we are and what it is that we are called to do, we were able to know, build out on that opportunity and help more persons, not just ourselves, but help others, and to build on that and learn so much more about the thing that we are already passionate about.
Yeah.
So that's just a tip from me. You know, I'm not the guest, but just from experience, right? And so let's continue. What do you think? Like, you said that you hang out on social. Social is your space. It's what you do. It's your vibe. What do you think? Like, what is your feedback, your assessment about how brands are generally managed on social media now?
Right. So before we get into the specifics, I want to be a little bit more specific about what types of brands. Are we talking about like the small business personal brands, or are we talking about the big brands?
So let's keep it to the entrepreneurs, small businesses, personal brand pages, that kind of thing. We're not dealing with the corporates, the big businesses that has the whole team behind them. No, we're talking to entrepreneurs here. It is our entrepreneur series, so let's deal with the entrepreneurs and the personal brands.
So what I'm seeing is the emergence of a lot of personal brands, and I'm actually super excited about it. So what I'm seeing is like a community of people actually coming out and saying, this is the face behind the brand, and interacting with people and growing and probably marketing their businesses through using their personal brands. Like, I'm super proud of it, and I'm so happy that we've gotten away from believing that like we need to hide behind business pages and have the business pages talk for us in a really weird way that doesn't feel super authentic because it's a business page. So I'm super proud of just seeing people kind of come out and say and building personal brands or using their personal brands to propel their business brands.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Do you think that it has anything to do with the pandemic though, and like the change in how we interact socially? Because we do know that there are persons who say, boy, they want more reality. They want to see persons and not necessarily brands. They want to see a human face and not a logo, because we already have so much isolation, so much distance. We're already missing human interaction. Do you think it has anything to do with the pandemic, or do you think it was just a natural progression?
So I can't 100% attribute it to the pandemic, but what I can say is that for people in our age group, we are looking for more from companies. So for us to be able to relate to companies, for us to be able to relate to brands and the way that or for us to relate to brands and choose who we spend our money with, I realize that people are looking for a lot more. They want to kind of have an understanding of who is behind these businesses. So I can't necessarily say it's the pandemic so much as it's just, as a people, we want more connection. We want to know more. We're seeing a rise in celebrity culture for that reason. And we're also seeing celebrities having to do more to kind of get people to spend more money with them. So they have to show up a lot more. They have to be like, hey, let me show you like inside my, it comes with its own problems, but like, let me show you the insides to my, everyday life. That's kind of how you gain that loyalty. People are looking more for trust now when they're buying something. They're not just looking like, okay, if I see it on TV, I'll trust it. Like, people want testimony. They want to hear personal testimonials of someone has used this brand, someone has interacted with this brand. People want to be able to trust brands a little bit more. So I'm thinking that's more along the lines of like where that personal brand building aspect of things has been coming from.
Agreed. I think it is a mix, and just generally as a generation, there is more. We need more
Yeah.
than the traditional. Hey, here's a logo kind of approach. So, thank you for that. And in considering now social media brand management, what are the top 3 tips that you would give someone who is listening in, someone who is preparing to start a business or who has just launched a business or is even in the midst of a revamp or just needs some encouragement to continue pushing through? What are the top 3 tips that you would give someone?
I will do my best to get to 3 because I can ramble. But the very first thing that I would say is actually be authentic. What I'm realizing is that we're in a space as of late where, and I want to put it in the best way possible. What I'm realizing is a lot of people are tending to kind of they're looking for success. So they're trying to go with what works. And that sometimes means that by trying to go up with what works, you follow people who are doing very specific things and you start to look and sound like them. But really what gets you the most success is finding your tribe of people, finding your target audience that likes who you are as a brand or likes your brand, whether that's you as a personal brand or your business brand, liking who you are as a brand. Find those people and speak to those people in the most authentic way. So that the first tip would just be to show up authentically. The next tip would be to stay consistent. A lot of people think that branding is this very harsh thing where you have to remind people what you do every single day. And like I said before, I was a business, I was a brand. So the money, the idea for the product didn't come until later, until I was already a brand, until I'd already established trust. It building a brand has really nothing to do with that, like I said, letting people know what you do every single day. It's more about just living in it, just existing in it, connecting with, understanding who your target audience is and connecting with them consistently. So that I'm going to touch on the third thing being consistency. But building a brand, what I'm really trying to say is takes time. A lot of people try to rush the process of brand building, and it's something that takes time because it's really about perception and how you can improve the perception that people have of you, how you can have people align certain images and ideas to your personal brand is simply just by staying consistent with it and living with it and just being persistent. Brand building takes time. The third thing is that consistency. So again, just consistently showing up. And I think so. I'm gonna jump on to something else instead of that. I think a third thing, I just kind of touched on that second thing. So instead of that, I'm gonna probably say third thing is know who you're talking to. That's my favorite thing ever. I 100% always believe in getting crystal clear on who your target client is, who your target audience member is. So even if you are not selling something, even if you are simply just building a personal brand because you want to be paid as an influencer, you want to have brand deals, always be clear on who you're talking to. And I realized that some brands have difficulty just, and we're going to get into probably content later, but some brands have difficulty just creating content and connecting with their audience for the simple fact that they don't know who they're talking to. They're trying to be the Walmart and speak to everyone or be the Amazon and sell to everyone, not realizing that even those brands have a target customer. A lot of people don't think about those things. So know who your target customer is, know exactly, and I'm gonna go even deeper with that, and you can stop me when you're ready. But going even deeper than that very, very specific tip, get to know your target customer, get to know what they like, what they dislike, get to know what keeps them up at night, get to know their hopes and dreams, so you can really connect with them from personal brand to person, build that trust, and then eventually when it comes time to sell or to do business, it's just so much easier. I think you're on mute. I want to say you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, I love those tips, right? And I particularly wanted to mention something about the very first tip you gave, being authentic. We do realize that there are a lot of persons offering training and courses on how to be successful on social media or how to be successful on YouTube. And they will give you a framework and a template. And what we have noticed, because as we were building our YouTube platform, of course, we were watching these videos too, because we're like, we don't know what we're doing. So we have to look to the persons who do know.
Yeah.
But what we realized is that a lot of the channels that were following the framework, they were following it so closely that they became mini replicas of the teachers, as opposed to adding their own flavor, adding their authenticity to the framework, so it would look like them, even though they were building on the same frame.
Exactly.
You know, so I love that, and it's so important that we identify who we are and what message we want to send.
Mhm.
Also, you would have mentioned consistency, and the fact that building a brand takes time. In terms of consistency, though, what does that really look like? Because sometimes hearing the word consistency can become a little overwhelming, because you feel like you have to put out 3 videos every week, or you have to put out, and you have to do this and you have to do that, and it becomes this burden versus you truly servicing your clients. So what does consistency really entail?
So I can totally see how that becomes how it can become overwhelming, because I think with social media these days, like the platforms are changing so quickly, and there's so many rules as to how you can thrive on each platform, that people think that I have to post 3 to 5 times a day to get results, and it becomes super overwhelming, like I said, and then it also becomes super draining and defeating, and you're just like, you know what, this space just isn't for me. I'm going to go in another direction when it's not necessary. So when I mean consistency, I really mean understanding your goals, creating a plan, and then basically like consistently executing. And I know I just used the word again, so let me go back again. So it just means executing that plan, just staying the course. So there are people who maybe come online and post once a month. But if you have a plan around posting once a month, where you're letting people know that once a month you will get this communication from me and it will be valuable, you will have people who will wait for that communication once a month. If you say, I'm going to post twice a week, and I'm going to drop something valuable, super valuable twice a week to achieve a certain goal of growing my email list or growing my following, people will look for that. So it really is about knowing how you add value and creating a system around adding value and sticking to that system. So even if socials tells you to post 3 to 5 times, if you have a system that again works for your target audience, understanding that. So if you have a system that works for your target audience, stick to that system. And that's really what I mean by consistency.
Thank you for that clarification. And then it also pulls on knowing your target audience,
It
right?
comes down to the target audience.
Yeah. So how do you suggest, though, that persons get to know their audience with everything being social and online and the way it is?
So I just had a chat about this week. So a few things that you can do. The very first thing to do is actually just go and talk to them. I realize a lot of brands are trying to sell to people, or personal brands are trying to sell whether it's you have a product, a physical product that you're selling, or it's a service, or it's a digital product, a lot of brands are trying to sell to people that they've never actually connected with. So I genuinely believe in actually going and speaking to your customer, finding out again those really important questions. First of all, who are you? The second thing is like, what problem do you have that needs solving? What are you struggling with? Going even deeper and asking, what is keeping you up at night as it relates to the product that I actually have? Because any other thing, I can't quite help you there. But if my product can solve a problem for you, asking those deeper questions, going to them and actually asking those questions. And that's what I really love about a personal brand. I don't think Wendy's can hop into your DM and be like, hey, what's keeping you up at night? That's weird. But if you as Morgan or Bob or whatever, you can jump into someone's DMs and be like, hey, I would love to connect with you. I just have a few questions that I want to ask you. The perfect person that I'd like to serve in my business. Can we chat for a bit? A lot of people will say yes, especially if it's super authentic and they don't feel like you're trying to sell them something. They will say yes and they will answer your questions. So that's the very first thing. The second thing is to just stay vigilant, really. So what I come to realize is that for Twitter, especially because I spend a lot of time there working on that, but I spend a lot of time on Twitter. And what I realize is that when I simply just follow people who are in my target audience, I tend to see them just complain about their problems, and I make notes of those problems in a super not creepy way, of course, in a way that is not stalkerish. But I just like to make notes of the problems that they're having and the specific words that they're using. So what you want to do is, once you do get that information from your clients or from your target customers, you want to put that back into your marketing, but we can talk about that later. You want to put that into your marketing to increase the likelihood that you're going to get sales. But in terms of getting to know your target customer, spend actual time with them on social, like actually follow them. I'm realizing that a lot of people are still in that space where they care about their follower count versus how much people they follow. For me, I think about a year ago, I kind of threw that out the window because I needed as much information as possible. So I spent a lot of time going after my target audience, following them, interacting with them, and bringing them back to my platform, back to my profile, my message. So in terms of getting to know your target customer, go and find them, go and interact with them, and actually reach out with them and spend some time learning about them. So those are my two top tips. Even more nitty gritty, you want to go to and this is like a probably like a, what is it? Pro tip. There we go. Pro tip. Where I used to also spend a lot of time in Facebook groups where my target clients were, and I was just spending a lot of time listening to the questions that they were asking as well. Facebook groups has done a really good job of that, where there's a group for almost anything. So if you have a target client that you want to better get to know, you want to go find a Facebook group and find out what questions are they asking, what problems are they having, and you can find out a lot there.
Awesome. And I particularly like that you were specific about how to go in the DMs, because there are persons who go to the DMs and they go straight with a sales strategy, or they go straight with, oh, I have this interesting opportunity for you, with the mystery and the mystique, and I'm like, bye. just bye. So I like that advice about going with authenticity and really just seeking to find out how you can better serve the person, because that's the point of a service. You're serving your customer. It's not really there for you to serve yourself, but for you to serve the customer. So I love that. Thank you. Guys, as you are listening in, feel free to send your questions if you have any questions for Crystal. Just dovetailing from that question though, Crystal, going directly to the customers, it's awesome. It's an awesome strategy. But how realistic is that for someone who has 2,000, 3,000 followers, 10,000 followers? How can they, what type of tools can they utilize to help them get that information about their target audience without being completely drained?
So the 2,000 followers would be me. I don't think that the amount of followers really almost matters. But in terms of tools, again, I do recommend that Facebook group. I know that there are different like survey services out there, but the way that I've typically done it has been to go directly to the consumer, or just spend time following people and just kind of like over time gathering insights about the things that they want to hear. Another thing that I didn't mention was that, yeah, another thing that I didn't get to mention was actually that once I kind of stopped doing the outreach, once that became a little too tedious, I think it's a better answer to your question. Once it became a little too tedious, I just started listening to my existing customers. I just started hearing what problems they had, speaking to them. So asking them questions about like, what brought you to me? What was that thing that said, okay, I need to get help now? Why did you need that help now? So specifically asking, why now? Why buy now? So this is particularly for service providers. If you have someone who's like, I'm interested in your service, that's someone who has a lot of insight into who your future customers are and what problems they're having. So I have a strong belief that where there's one, there's 10, where there's 10, there's 100, where there's 100, there's 1,000, and so on and so on. If there's one person with a problem, guarantee you can find 10 more people. If you can find 10 more, there's 100 more. And that's really like my belief. So listening to your actual customers who come through the door, setting up systems to actually get feedback from them, and being able to track that feedback, I always find is super helpful when it becomes too tedious to actually set up those conversations and chat with your customers.
Great. So another question that came to mind for me as you were speaking is, how do you determine which platform to use as a brand?
It really comes down to your capacity, and it comes down to what comes most natural to you. So a lot of people think that they have to be on Instagram, they have to be on Twitter, they have to be on Facebook, and that's actually not true. I actually do recommend, when you are a brand just starting out, I recommend actually choosing the platform that comes most naturally to you, that you can, again, stay consistent on, where you can have an actual plan that you execute over and over again and just stay committed to. So it's really what feels most comfortable to you. But Instagram, if you can take some pretty pictures, right? If you can do some videos, if you're able to show up consistently with your face and with your voice, I definitely recommend Instagram. For Twitter, it is if you can consistently just hold conversation there and show up with your thoughts and provide value with your thoughts, definitely do that. For LinkedIn, we're gonna have to call Joelle for that. For LinkedIn, that's not my area of expertise, but I'm learning the space and I realize it's very similar. It's actually a cross between both Twitter and Instagram, so that's something to check out as well. But it really is just deciding like which platform comes most naturally to you. Facebook, again, Facebook groups. How well are you? How good are you at networking? Really, Facebook. Those groups are all about just kind of networking, providing value, and then leading people from those platforms to your platform. I'd also say understand the role that social media plays in your overall sales strategy. That's something that people don't talk about. So the platform that matters depends on the role that social media plays. So for me, and also we're going to talk about that last thing, where your target audience is. But let's first talk about the role that the social plays in your overall sales strategy. So for me, I don't actually do a lot of my marketing, so to speak, or marketing on Twitter, just because I realized that for the most part, my leads and sales come from Instagram. So I do a lot of intentional brand building over there. But what I do realize is that some of my opportunities, like the bigger opportunities that come every once in a while, when they come, they're wonderful, come from Twitter. So my strategy on Twitter is a little bit different. My consistency is a little bit different. What I talk about on Twitter is a little bit different. So I chose Instagram because I realized that if I want consistent sales, brand building there makes sense. Twitter I chose because, one, I kind of grew up there, and two, because I realized that the opportunities that come from there are opportunities that kind of take my brand to the next level. So that's how I've gotten around to choosing those platforms. And then the third thing would be find out where your target audience is. So if you are serving a much older audience, why waste time on Instagram? Chances are the majority of your audience is going to be on Facebook. If you're looking for more corporate clients who come with the big checks, you probably want to go to LinkedIn, because that's where they're going to be hanging out. If you're looking for more that millennial audience, that younger audience with buying power, you're going to want to go to Instagram. If you're looking for that audience that will Twitter is a little bit of a little different in terms of like who's actually on there. But if you're looking to just really build your audience and probably use and probably do a lot of lead generation where you're taking people from one platform and bringing them to your personal platform, I definitely recommend a Twitter. So it really depends on what part social media plays in your overall sales strategy and you generating sales, and then deciding where your target client actually hangs out and reaching them there and not wasting time anywhere else.
I love that because we had to go through the very same process. We had to identify our strategy. At first, we had started off, we want to be everywhere because we thought we needed to be everywhere and reach everybody, you know. But then the more we learned, we understood that we have to identify one primary platform and then use the others as we see fit, as necessary. So persons may notice that a lot of brands now, they'll just for Instagram have a background and you're seeing a snippet of their tweet because they're
Yeah.
on Twitter and literally just repurposing the Twitter content for Instagram because yeah, I want my Instagram peeps to get the value that I'm providing on Twitter, but I don't have a pretty picture to put with it every single day, you know. And Twitter is so much faster. You just shoot out. I mean, and that has its pros and cons. Listen.
That's a conversation for another time. It definitely has its pros and cons.
Yes. So I'm glad that you broke it down that way because understanding what is good for you and where your audience is and how you need to interact on each of those platforms to stay relevant is important because it differs across the platforms. As similar as they may be, it does differ, right? So do the research, guys. Understand, or just try trial and error. That works too. That
For the
works
longest,
too.
for the longest time, I kept away from Instagram. Twitter was my space. I used a lot of Facebook because at the time, in my one of my earlier businesses, my target audience was a lot older, so Facebook just made a lot more sense for them. But for the longest time, I'd actually fought Instagram, and it wasn't until about, I want to say, February of this year that I relaunched my new brand on Instagram, and it has been doing so well in terms of new leads, sales, different opportunities. I was like, oh, Instagram's not so bad. So I just ended up developing a whole strategy to just kind of making interacting on there a lot easier. And now I actually spend a lot more time on Instagram than I used to.
Well, I'm the complete opposite. I I was an Instagram girl, Facebook at first, and then Instagram. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm comfortable on Instagram. Twitter for me, I was just like, and I look at too harsh over there. It's a little too much for me. I can't keep
Yeah.
up, you know. But just this year, I was encouraged, very strongly encouraged by a certain Mr. McDonald to get started on Twitter in a real way, in a meaningful way. I would have had the account from 2009,
Oh,
but I
wow.
literally started using it this year. So it has its place. It does have value both for personal branding and for our community brands. So definitely would advise you to identify, or listeners that is, to identify what platform works best for you, for your strategy, for your business, for your brand, and work with a primary one. Do not feel like you have to be on every single platform all at once. Build
Yeah.
out one and then start and then work on the others, you know? So as we're talking about the different platforms, we understand that different content types work differently or work better on particular platforms. So we won't go into all of them, but we've been talking a little bit about Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. What are the content types that you find to be most effective on just those three? Krista, are you there? Oh no, we think Krista froze. So So yes, all right. So I'll just jump in the chat for a little bit and see what is being said here. I see a question from Yannick asking if the live will be saved for later viewing. Absolutely. Our lives are always available on our YouTube channel right here, right where you're viewing it right now. It will be there afterwards. Um, so guys, if you have any questions for Crystal, please do feel free to drop them in the chat while we try to work out what is happening on her side to get her back on the platform with us. So she's back.
It was
Praise the
me?
Lord.
Oh no. I won't comment just
Oh,
for the
no.
Wi-Fi I have.
Yeah, that's all right. So we're grateful that you're back. Right. So we're talking about content types on the different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. What type of content do you find to be most effective on each of those platforms?
Ooh, the way things are changing now. I mean, the first thing I would want to say is that value is value, and value content that provides value to your audience will work in whatever format. But if we're now talking about what works on the different platforms to increase your reach and all the other stuff that the platforms want us to care about. So on Twitter, of course, the regular tweets, that's gonna do very well. On Instagram, you're gonna like right now they're pushing a lot of video, so those that's gonna really have you do well to the point where like if you put out there's a new feature reels or there's a new feature reels right now if you put out a reel it's probably going to do way better than if you put out a regular video on your platform, so you just kind of want to like abide by those rules. LinkedIn again, gonna have to call somebody else for what's going on over LinkedIn. I'll find out eventually. But I realized that like video content for the most part is increasing in not just popularity, but a lot more people are consuming information through video. So you want to go with video content. But if we're just talking about like the actual content itself, before we even get into content types, like again, that value content will never go out of style. Like right now, people are in a space where they want brands to provide them with value. They want something that they can share. They want something that first they can share and something they can also say like, wow, I didn't know this, or this brand was super helpful. So if you're a service-based brand, like you want to spend a lot of time just providing value to your audience. That doesn't always mean just telling them how to do something. It just can simply be again solving their problem. So you'd have to actually know what problems they're having so you can provide valuable content to them. The next type of content is going to be personal content. So a lot of people tend to leave that out when they're building their personal brands. They're just super all the time just talking about their brands or their niches. So if they're in marketing, they're just always talking about marketing, and they end up becoming very one-dimensional people that people just don't know how to relate to. So yes, you're offering value, but you might not see that convert into sales because people don't really trust you. They don't know you as a person. So putting out personal content, nothing too crazy, but just personal content to have your audience know that you are actually a person and that you actually, like them, have feelings, have triumphs, have wins, have losses. People actually want that. Like we're in a space where people want to know who you are, they want to like you, and they want to trust you before they actually hand over their money. So even before we get into all the content types that are ever changing, value really does not go out of style, as well as personal content. If you're going to be a personal brand, letting people in to some extent. I always say have your brand story really matter to your product. So I don't want you to tell them about, the stuff that you haven't yet healed from, or things that might just be that you don't want them to really use against you. But use parts of your story that your audience will find valuable. Use parts of your story that your audience can resonate with and can draw inspiration from, or use parts of your story that your audience can say, I didn't know this and I'm going to support this brand because this business owner shared this particular thing with me. So definitely valuable content, and then content that is a little bit more personal, that gets people to resonate with whatever messaging you're putting out.
So true, so relevant. It's it is off-putting. It is off-putting when we're only seeing buy this from me, buy my product, buy my service, but we don't know who you are. So I love that. I love that answer. I love that response. And then I completely also agree with you in terms of the ever changing nature of the content requirements. It feels like you want to tear your hair out because you'll get a new thing to try, and it's new on the platform, and you're like, all right, yes, I'm going to do this, and by the time you get good at that, another thing comes. Or what I hear a lot of local content creators having a challenge with right now is the fact that reels are being pushed, but we still don't all have access to reels. I hear some persons locally saying yes, they have access to reels, but it's not everyone. So there is this unbalanced approach. So would you recommend, earlier you mentioned, building a platform or building your audience on a platform and pushing them towards your content. Would you recommend that brands, personal brands, small businesses, entrepreneurs have a website that is their space outside of these social media platforms, or do you think that social media platforms alone are enough?
So social media platforms alone are not enough. Again, I do want people to first understand the role that social media plays in your overall sales process so that if things ever change, you understand how to pivot if necessary. So for me, I have specifically kind of like decentralized social media from my sales process. So brand building, yes, sales process, not so much, just because the platforms are so, I want to call them shaky right now. They're so shaky, but they're just changing so rapidly. But in terms of website, I'm going to say yes, it's helpful to have a website, but in terms of what your website is supposed to do, it's not going to replace social. So, what I do prefer or what I do recommend is people actually just moving people to their personal email list. So, when social went down the other day, people were talking about build your email list, build your email list. I actually believe in that. But I don't believe it in the sense of build it just in case these platforms go down. I mean, own your own platforms, own these email addresses, or get these email addresses that belong to you, and consistently connect with people off of social media. Build a community off of social media. And I think that's something that we haven't touched on yet, community building. But build that community, off of social media. So website, yes, but it's still very one-sided. It's still you talking to your customers, and in order to build a community, you want people to be able to talk back to you. So I actually, a few things that I'm seeing people do that I do recommend is using other platforms where you can actually push your audience to, and you guys can have regular conversations, sort of like a Facebook group, but it looks different. It's called Circle. Circle is one of those platforms that you can do that. I also recommend, again, having an email list, but you can move people to Telegram. You can move them to Slack, depending on what your product is and depending on who your customer is and where they already hang out and what platforms are easy for them to use. So you can use Slack, Telegram, email, or a platform like Circle where you can host your audience. So I do 100% believe in owning your audience, not just because these platforms could one day go away, but it's just the thing about these platforms is, especially for an Instagram or a Facebook, a lot of their revenue comes from ads, which means that gone are the days when you're going to get the type of reach that you would have gotten organically. Now that ads are super popular, these platforms want you to spend money on ads. So if you are a business and you are expecting organic reach to kind of propel your business, you're playing a losing game. You're going to feel very frustrated. You're going to feel very resentful of these platforms, just because data wise, on average, even if you grow your audience to 10,000, 20,000 people, Instagram specifically will only really allow you to interact with maybe 2 to 10% of your audience at a time, which means that if you want to get in front of your entire audience, the audience that you spent time and potentially money building, you're going to have to spend either more time or more money to get back in front of them. Instead, if you understand the role that social media plays in your overall sales process, you can build on social, but make sure that at every stage you're moving people from social to your personal platforms. That way, you don't have to keep on spending money to get in front of them. You can consistently, if it's email, you're spending money on the email platform, but you own those email addresses. You can get in front of them every day if you want to, right? And so for some email platforms, you only pay per month. So definitely want to encourage other people to build off of those platforms for those other reasons other than those platforms potentially disappearing.
Girl, you're speaking to my soul right now. You you are speaking to my soul because the frustration is so real when you try to build organically on social
Yeah.
media. It is frustrating because and if you have a business page, if you're listening, if you're watching and you have a business page, then you know that there are these constant pushes to place an ad, to boost this post, to
Yeah.
utilize some free credit, and you can reach this number of persons. You know, it's a constant push, and it's always put in front of you because, as you said, Krista, they want you to spend money on this thing.
They need
And
you to do it, is what it is.
yeah, yeah, and there's no guarantee at the other end of it. And I mean that's just the nature of advertising. Yes, it will get in front of more persons, but that's about it. So is it worth it? That's something that you truly have to determine, as opposed to being the one who is in control of the information and being able to go directly to your customers.
Yeah.
I Man, you spoke to me.
Definitely going through it. Sometimes I wonder, how did I choose this profession? Like even in the last few weeks, so many changes have happened on each of these like every single one of these platforms, especially Instagram. She has been going through it. I call her she. She has been going through it. Instagram has been going through it, right? So for business owners who have built their entire livelihoods on Instagram, where if Instagram goes down, like their money disappears, it's super important that they understand that these platforms are in it to make money. So another thing is that it's really important that that business owners don't spend time again focusing on trying to get to a certain follow amount, like 10K or 20, whatever it is. Like followers are great, but I always say that like follower does not equal customer. So again, you want to understand what role social plays in your sales process, and then have it be part of your sales process, not the entire sales process. It's really dangerous to build your entire business on one single platform. So you want to diversify where your money is coming from by also building off social and building on other platforms.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you touched on that because a lot of times we are looking at the followers, we're looking at the likes, we're looking at the number of comments, we're looking at all of these things, and I feel like sometimes I feel like it's a point of pride for persons to say, "Oh, I have 10K followers." Yeah, but what are you doing with them, or what are they doing? You know, for you, with you, are they actually interacting with your page, or do they just follow you? Are they actually seeing your content? No, not really, because that's just not how the algorithm works. So I'm a firm believer in quality over quantity. I would rather have 10 followers who are actually benefiting from my content, who are actually engaged and interacting, than having 10,000 who just have a very meager association, if any at all, with what it is that we're doing and what we're representing. Because
Yeah.
if you have a business, if you have a business, if you're building a brand, then you want it to be out there, you want it to be impacting people. You're doing it for a reason. It's not just to say you have a business, it's to serve a need. So yeah, I am down with that. So I don't want us to close out without addressing this particular point. What are the most common mistakes that we see, that you see on social media when persons are building either personal brand or business brand on social media? What are the most common mistakes? Top three.
So I'll see if I can get to three because this one is pretty. This one I've been focused on for a while. I realize that a lot of people's problems start with the fact that they have the wrong customer. So they're showing up consistently, they're promoting their products, they're doing everything that they should be doing, but they're talking to the wrong people in the wrong way. And that stops them from making sales, it stops them from growing, it stops them from progressing, whatever it is. The foundation that a lot of people miss and end up making the mistake of just trying to grow without getting that foundation right is not knowing who their target customer is. And people make the mistake of thinking target customer means, okay, I serve older women, older Jamaican women, ages 30 to 45, and that's the target audience. And I can definitely say that I was there. But when it comes to social, there is just so much noise. There is so much noise, so much brands, so many different brands trying to get your ideal customer's attention that you have to kind of niche down. My favorite word is niche. I should put it on my forehead because that is my favorite word. You want to get so specific about your customer that when you create content, they say, wow, this was for me. You spoke to me and I'm going to buy because you understood me. A lot of brands are making the mistake of trying to be Walmart and Amazon, trying to speak to and speak to everyone at the same time, and it just doesn't work. Your customers get confused. The messaging doesn't resonate with them. You start to sound like everyone else. You also start to sound confused. And if you're confused, your customers are going to be confused, and confused customers don't buy. So that is a mistake that I notice a lot of people make, especially in the beginning. There's definitely ways to to stop making that mistake. But I realized that people make the mistake of just not knowing who their customer is, and that affects their entire brand moving forward. When you don't know who your customer is, you cannot create content that resonates. If you can't create content that resonates, you cannot actually generate consistent sales and generate even more sales. Or even more so, because you don't know who your actual customer is, you spend a lot of time trying to build a huge audience, hoping that your target customer is going to be in it to get more sales. What I've come to realize is that by having a very specific audience that I speak to, my audience can be small, but that spending power is large because I know who they are. And when I speak directly to them, I gain their specific trust and they spend money with me. So that's going to be the first mistake. The second mistake that brands typically make, and I'm going to think about it real hard because that first one was a strong mistake. That second one, I'm going to say, when it comes to business brands, you are a business, which means that you are there to make money. I realize that business brands, and this is even if you're a personal brand that is selling something, I'm assuming you're doing this work to make something, right? I'm noticing that these brands don't understand how to actually use the content that they put out to generate sales. So when it comes to actually selling something, they go, the first half of what they do is brand building, interacting with their customers, being all friendly and great. And then when they start to sell, it's like buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now. And their customers are just like, that doesn't work for me. So I'm realizing not a lot of people know how to use different types of content to sell. So they make the mistake of just sounding, I want to say, like that car that passes you. I'm not sure where everybody else grew up, but there used to be a car that passed my house and said, tonight, come on out, and try to sell you. And it's just like, what is this doing for people? So I realize a mistake that people make is just not understanding how to use their content to sell to their specific target audience when the time comes. They spend so much time building up the audience and assuming that because they built the audience will buy. That is not the case. If you want your audience to buy, you have to first give them something to buy, and two, invite them to buy in a way that resonates with them and gets them to take action. So you have to know how to actually do that. Third mistake. What is that third mistake?
No pressure to reach the three, if it's two, it's two. That's okay.
I mean, if I really start, I thought it was a bunch, but I'm trying to think about the most impactful mistakes that if people make those changes now, they can start to see a results like or difference in just kind of like how their brand is perceived and how much money they actually make at the end of the month or at the end of the year. So that third mistake would be, I want to say, being inconsistent. So first, not having a strategy, and then just being inconsistent. So what people tend to do sometimes is they show up online, they show up for a while, they don't see results, they disappear and say, I give up. And then they're just like, you know what, I'm going to try again. They come back and they say, I'm going to post again. And then they don't see results and then they give up again. I've come to realize that I have just gotten more traction in business, and I see this for my clients as well. You get more traction simply just by consistently showing up, by consistently just iterating and fixing things, and eventually your target client, once you kind of, again, that target client bit is really important. You can be consistent in the wrong direction. So once you kind of get that target client right and you understand how to actually sell, doing that consistently. People need to be able to trust your brand, which takes time. Trust takes time. So just showing up sporadically ever so often without a real plan makes it very difficult for your audience to trust you, which is why I mentioned earlier, if you plan to just show up once a month, make sure that once a month actually your audience notices. Make sure that your audience finds value from that once a month that you show up. So having a strategy where even if you show up once a month, that strategy is so strong that people are looking forward to you showing up once a month, and stick to that, right? So not being consistent first, not having that strategy, and then being consistent with executing a strategy, and finally waiting for that strategy to sticking with it long enough for that strategy to actually get results is a mistake that I'm seeing. People tend to jump from strategy to strategy. They're just like, well, I tried this and it didn't work, so this is probably number 4. But hey, people tend to jump from strategy to strategy because they just like, I tried this, I got this from this coach, I got this from this program, I tried it for a month and it didn't work, that must be the wrong one, I have to try something else. So they get this, what we call shiny object syndrome, where they're just like, ooh, strategy, ooh, this person said this would work, ooh, this person said this business would work, and they won't stick with one long enough to actually learn how the space that they're in works, learn how the customer that they're serving likes to be sold to, learn what type of messages or what type of content their actual audience wants to hear from them before they give up. So it goes back to that consistency, giving your strategy enough time, or sometimes even more than enough time, to actually start producing results. And then final, so I'm going to leave it at 5. That 5th one is not mistake I'm seeing is people don't care about data, or they're ignoring the data. Like, if you're consistently showing up, if you're consistently doing something and you notice that, okay, this is working, you want to pay attention to what's working and you want to do more of that. What I see a lot of people doing, again, is jumping from strategy to strategy, ignoring what those strategies are telling them about their audience, ignoring what those strategies are telling them about its ability to get sales. So people make the mistake of, again, not being consistent, jumping from strategy to strategy, not giving things enough time to work, and then like having that shiny object syndrome. So that was a little bit more than people type. I took a little while to get there.
That's all right. But so a couple questions. How much time is enough time to see if a strategy is working? And two, the other question is about consistency. Would you recommend content planners or content schedulers to help with that consistency? And which ones, if any, can you recommend for our audience listening?
Recommend content planners. Currently for me and my team, we actually created our own, just because like we have our own content system that we put out. So we do create our own. Maybe one day I'll give it away for free, or not. We'll see. But maybe one day I'll give it away. But content planners, I do recommend. It just kind of keeps everything in one place. It makes things super easy to just kind of like, put things out there. Remind me what that very first question was.
How long is long enough to see if a strategy is working?
That's why I forgot it. Oh, so as a marketer, I'm going to say, and I'm going to give personal experience and then marketing experience. As a marketer, I will say a minimum of 3 months. People kind of do things in a few weeks and they go, oh, it didn't work, I'm going to leave. A few months. It takes a few months for your audience to first notice that you just did something different. It takes a few months for you to actually probably move enough people through your sales process from beginning to end for you to actually tell what worked or not. So if you're going to implement a new strategy, I say a minimum of 3 months to just kind of start getting those results that you can actually start making some assumptions from, right? But I want to kind of drive home the point that marketing is testing. So giving yourself that time, that minimum of 3 months, but I would even stretch it out as far as 6 months. Stay consistent with one strategy, if it's one platform for 6 months, track those results, and then if necessary, I would say tweak it. So I wouldn't say completely throw it away. I would say tweak it because something might have worked. So staying on top of what worked versus what didn't work, and then pivoting if necessary. So minimum 3 months. I would say for one of my latest campaigns that has actually been doing very well, that strategy, we're only in the middle of it, but it started in, I want to say, we started planning for it in June. So I want to say we started planning for it in June. It probably went live maybe in July, and then we're now, oh my God, we're in November. We're in November, and we're just at, it still feels like the beginning. We still have a whole campaign that's going all the way till next year. And it's not until next year that we're going to stop and look and say, okay, what worked starting last year? And then we're going to start over again in June, start with the same strategy. So we have May, so it ends in March. We have April and May to pivot and see what worked and kind of analyze that data in full. And then June, we're going to start all over again, keeping the aspects that worked, but incorporating new aspects based on the new information that we have. So it really depends on the business owner, how much time you have, how committed you are. So for me, minimum 3 months, but for the one strategy that we're currently running right now, we're watching it over a few months because it's just that important and it's just that integral to our entire business process. So it really depends on type of business, depends on the type of business owner that you are, depends on where you are in business, but a minimum 3 months.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think 3 months can feel long, trying to stick to something for 3 months, but I also believe in the content planners, the schedulers. They're very helpful because at least when you have planned that strategy, that 3 month strategy, you can always put your content in the scheduler, in the planner, and just let it run. It also takes some of that burden off of you from having to create every day or create every other day or whatever it is. So I think those are awesome tips. As we're about to wrap up, there was something that you touched on that I will not go into. I think it's a whole conversation onto itself, and that's the analytics. Checking and identifying what worked and what didn't work, and how to analyze that information, because sometimes you just see the numbers and it's like, all right, what does that really mean? Does it have any value? But I strongly recommend that persons take some time to understand what the analytics mean so that it can inform your strategy.
Yeah.
So again, I just want to say thank you so much, Krista, for joining us. Are there any parting words that you would like to leave with our audience? And also, please share with our audience how they can find you, how they can get in touch with you if they would like to connect with you.
Parting words. First is that marketing, again, is testing. Brand building takes time. So brand building, marketing, they take time. So if you are trying to build a brand that is, one, supposed to make you money, or two, just supposed to open doors for you, it takes time. So my advice is always just be prepared to kind of commit for the long haul. Don't confuse your customers, just stick with one thing, and eventually your brand has the power essentially to open doors for you and have you in rooms that you didn't think you were qualified for. There are times when your brand will kind of be in, again, rooms and you have no idea. So I always recommend just kind of staying the course, planting your flag somewhere and just staying the course. So that's going to be the first thing. And then where can you find me? So you can find me on I would say, put right now, Twitter and Instagram. Twitter and Instagram at MS Miss Krista Forbes. Back in the day, some of you may, for whoever knew me, used to be Coach Krista, but we pivoted to a new brand. So now people call me Miss Krista. So MS Krista Forbes. I am there basically if you want branding and marketing advice and advice about selling stuff online. Definitely follow me on Instagram. If you want to learn about my personal life and what I'm doing on Friday, see you on Twitter.
Awesome. Fantastic. So we will definitely be leaving that information for Krista, the links to her pages in the description below. So you can just click and connect right away. So thank you again so much, Krista, for being here with us and for sharing your wisdom with our audience today. And thank you all for joining us for another Learn, Grow, Invest entrepreneurship meeting. We will see you in the next one.
Thanks for having me.